Aaron. Give myself a timer. All right, so I understand that a lot of you, some of you have been here a long time. Some of you are relatively new to town. So I'm going to give a little bit about the town history, how we've gotten to where we are today, and also give you some new information about what we've been doing to improve our fiscal resiliency going into the future. To start, I think it's important to understand a little bit about my history and how I got to where I am today, because a lot of it informs how I approach government finance here in the town of Bluffton. I started my career in June of 2008 with the city of Tulsa, and I was the capital planning analyst and put in charge of their monthly economic analysis report to the town council. And if you remember back to 2008, there was a lot going on in that summer. A lot of bells were going off, but no one really understood the brevity or the gravity of what was about to occur. As you all know, in September, we had a great stock market crash and things collapsed. The bubble burst on the housing market. And in Oklahoma, their constitution does not allow towns to use property taxes to fund operations. They can only use property taxes to fund debt, or pay for debt. So towns in Oklahoma are heavily reliant upon sales tax to fund their operations. If you know anything about sales tax revenues highly impacted by the condition of the economy. So it's called an elastic revenue source. So it's when times are good, sales tax goes up. When times are bad, sales tax drops. So we went into panic mode. We had massive budget cuts, laid off several people, several furlough days for the employees that made it through the cuts. And immediately we were pushed into a position where how do we operate, how do we provide the service level that we're providing with drastically less resources. So that's about how my career started, right off the bat. And nothing, in the 90s were good, revenues were good, governments were going through expansion periods in the 90s, so nothing prepared me for that, nothing in my training ever talked about that level of crisis, so very unique. But we'll go over a little bit about town history, where we are today, former government, some of the history of growth, fiscal implications of that, our sources and uses, and how we build fiscal resiliency moving forward. And at the end, I'll give you an update on a few key projects that are going on. So it was established in 1825, incorporated in 1852, and it was a summer coastal retreat for a lot of plantation owners. And I'll preface this, I am no town historian, so I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that know our history a lot better than I do. So this is just the high points. If you haven't heard about the burning of Bluffton, look into it. So Sherman marched through Bluffton, burned most of the structures. There were 60 structures pre-war, post-war, 2 churches and 15 residences remain. Granted National Historic Designation in 96, and we have 54 contributing structures. And I put the link to the Historic Bluffton Foundation down there. They put out a video, I don't know, about a year ago or so, and they interviewed town residents who have been here their whole life about the history of Bluffton. It's really well done. I can't remember how long it is. It's quite a long video, but it's really interesting. I encourage you to go out to the website and watch it. It'll give you the whole story of Bluffton. It's really well done. So we are a council manager form of government, adopted in 1999. Our council is elected at large, 4-year staggered terms in odd years. So we meet the second Tuesday of the month. We also have quarterly CIP workshops, so every quarter we go over the status of our CIP projects. And then we have an annual strategic planning workshop in January, February, that's also open to the public. We are a limited service government, so we do not have municipal utilities. And we don't have a fire department, that's a separate district. So these are our current council members. I'm sure many of you know them. The mayor is Lisa Solka, Mayor Pro Tem is Fred Hamilton, Larry Toomer, Dan Wood, or Ellen, and Bridget Frazier. And our new town manager is Stephen Steese. He showed up to one meeting here, and we'll get him back to speak in a future date. So real quick, this is the vision and mission of town. The heart of the low country. Town that appreciates the past, focuses on today, and planning together for a better future. We take care of our citizens, the town, and each other by continuously making our community organization better. And key things in this mission: take care of our citizens. since I arrived, it was very clear that we have a citizen-first approach, and it was an unofficial policy that anytime anyone in the town is contacted by a citizen, whether you have an answer or not, you get back to them within 24 hours, no matter what. And I can genuinely say that town staff take that to heart. And then continuously making our community organization better. So we are continuously looking for improvements to how we operate and how we interact with the public. So we are 54 square miles. 92% is within development area. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. 46% build out, and these numbers are about 6 months old, so it's a little different now, but this gives you the idea. We're the 5th largest in land mass in South Carolina, and the most recent census, the population is around 28,000 in incorporated area. Median age 37 and a half, per capita income 38,000, median household is 82,000, median rent is 1,700, and median home value is 290 again. That's about a year old, so it may be different now. So this is where we started. So prior to 1987, this was the town of Bluffton. This red dot right here. And then between 87 and 2000, we had some annexations, the biggest being the Palmetto Vault area right down here. And then between 2000 and 2005, much of what we know now as the town of Bluffton was added. And some more annexations between 5 and 10, and a little more. And then just this year, the St. Gregory property up north of 278 over there was added to the town of Bluffton. So that hasn't been updated yet. So that's where we're at today. And all these we call these the donut holes. These are unincorporated. We're counting all the white areas. So those are areas within our geographic boundary, but they do not, they don't get our trash service and they can't vote in our elections. So here's a breakdown of the development agreements, 7 development agreements by color code. In each of these, you can see the residential build up versus non-residential build out. And as I mentioned before, 92% of the town is under these development agreements. So what's important to understand is that the path that we were headed as a town, as far as growth and number of residents, was set in motion 20 years ago. And these development agreements are in place. They're hard to amend. It has to be mutually agreed upon. Council has to approve it. There's a long process to go through. So the chances of reducing any drastic level of residential build out at this point is next to none. It is what it is. The town planned for an end population of about 63,000 many years ago, and that's where we're headed. So if you have people that are looking to come down, and let them know, we're 28,000 today, but we're going to be 63,000 many years from now. If you're okay with that, then come on down. So a lot of people don't understand that when they move down there. They see this small, quaint town, they see 20,000 people, why can I deal with that? They don't realize that we've already planned many years ago to be a much bigger town than that 20,000. So again, here's the growth. Obviously not much activity between 90 and 2000. And then with all those developments that you saw come on, we started seeing drastic increase in growth. And we're at 28,000 residents. And that's about, I think, 5 or 6, I think 6 years ahead of what the town initially projected. So we're going much faster than what the initial projections were. And again, the build-out population is around 63,000. So real quick, this is an overview of our budget. See if this works. No. All right, so the general fund is your main operating fund. The 22 budget was $22 million. Stormwater fund is 2.2. Capital improvements, which funds all the projects going around town, is 11.6 million. And then our debt service fund is used to pay down the various bonds. Here's a breakdown of our revenues. Property tax 32%, and then building permits and development fees 21%. And I point that out, $4.8 million. I'll get into this in a little bit, but that is a key number to watch because remember that is supporting the operations of the town, and it went into the analysis that we did on how do we plan for the future as build out occurs and that revenue source drastically decreases. Here's a quick look at our millage. So 14% of your property taxes is town. The rest is county, school district, and fire district. In 18, it was 40.35, went down to 38.5, and has remained flat since then. And that is just an example of an appraised home value of 280. So the total millage of all the districts that you pay into is 286.3 mills. If you're from the north, you look at that and like, well, that doesn't make sense because my property tax is a lot less than I paid up north, and my millage was only, what, 30, 40 mills up there. So the difference is in how they assess against your appraised value. So resident assessed value is either 4% or 6%. 4% if you're a resident, 6% if you're a non-resident that has a property in town. And up north, if you look at that figure, it'll be in the 90%. So they'll take 90% of your appraised value and then apply the millage to that. So even though the millage may look less, you're paying more in taxes because the assessed value is a lot higher. And I use Connecticut as an example because that's where I came from. Expenditures by department. So, I mean, you can see here the main expenditure is police, public works, which is all your parks and facilities, and then your town-wide budget. About 75% of your town-wide budget is your trash collection. So trash, public works, and police is really where the majority of the money goes. All right, so building fiscal resiliency, what does that mean? So the ability to withstand and recover from events that impact resources and or assets. This is kind of a buzz phrase in government over the past, 10, 20 years, driven by these several different economic crises we face, as well as concerns around natural disasters. And so you look at promoting expenditure efficiencies, optimizing revenues as much as possible, and how do you plan and control for various volatility factors. So how do we avoid a permanent fiscal crisis? And I put that in quotes because this man right here, I don't know if anyone's from Connecticut, but he was the budget director for the state of Connecticut for 8 years. And they brought him up to a legislative committee and he had to speak. And he let this quote slip out. And of course, everyone jumped down for that. He reports directly to the governor. But it was very accurate, right? So Connecticut and many states up north, including as well as in Illinois and California, they are in a permanent state of fiscal crisis. They're constantly trying to address huge gaps, huge liabilities, with not enough resources, and decreasing trust in government. And when the governor left office, Governor Malloy left office, he got a job as my boss in the higher ed system as the CFO. And it was very interesting because prior to him being my boss, I was extremely critical of him and not a fan of his. But working with him, I grew to appreciate him and his intellect. He is really a good guy at the end of the day. I put this picture over here. I had a mentor many years ago, and I'm the type of person that's very analytical, so I get stuck in these analytical loops. So I get stuck in the analytical loop where I'm going round and around and around and around trying to figure out the best solution. And he said to me, Chris, it's budgeting. It's not rocket science. So you just stop. So I use it all the time. Anytime I get stuck on an analysis, like I'm overthinking it, I gotta stop. But really, it comes down to these basic things that everyone, and pretty much everyone here knows this, right? You want to minimize your long-term liabilities, minimize debt, compensated absences in government. You earn compensated absences that accrue over time, so you want to keep that liability low. Keep your other post-employment benefits low, unfunded pension liabilities, and then constantly evaluating short-term financial decisions for the long-term impact. So promoting expenditure efficiencies, one of the things you do is improving processing and leveraging technology. And I'll use my experience in the state of Connecticut. I grew government shared services. They had 130 state agencies across the state, and each agency had their own HR, own finance division, everything. So there's a lot of duplication of services. I use this quote, I don't need more financial services, I need more boll weevil inspectors. If you know what a boll weevil is, it's this beetle that devastates cotton crops. And the cotton industry is huge in Oklahoma. And when I went to the boll weevil agency, their director walked in and he's about 6'5", he's got a cowboy hat on, Wrangler jeans, a belt buckle the size of my face, a handlebar, mustache, And here I am dressed very much like I am today from, a Yankee from the North, and he's looking at me very skeptical. We had very tough conversations, but at the end of the day, I moved his administrative services to our service platform. And he called me up one day, and usually when he calls me, it was to complain about something. So I was like, hey, how you doing? And he goes, you know what, Chris, I gotta apologize. I'm like, what are you apologizing for? He said, well, today I was able to hire a new bullwhip inspector. You allowed me to reduce my expenses so that I can advance my mission. And at the end of the day, government shared services is about that, right? Agencies do not exist to pay invoices. They do not exist to cut POs. They exist for whatever mission they were created for. And the point of government shared services was allowing those agencies to focus their resources on their true mission, which is not paying invoices. So what are some of the things we're doing here in Bluffton? We have a citizen self-service portal. Much of the things you need to interact with town can be done online through this portal. The council passed a short-term rental program, and we leveraged technology right from the get-go. I didn't want to implement a paper-based program and then try and go to electronically. Right off the bat, we have an online registration form for that. We put in customer kiosks within the customer service area for residents to use. Vendor registry, so if you're doing business with town, everything can be done electronically now. It's not paper-based RFPs and back and forth and mailing. It's all done electronically with vendor registry. Electronic payments. A lot of people take this for granted, but when I arrived at Bluffton, 100% of our payments were paper checks. And so we are starting a process to move our vendors all electronically to electronic payments. But remember, we're a young town. We're really, we've been around since the early 1800s, but really the town as we know it today is only about 20 years old. And see Quick Fix. Look up that app. It's an awesome app. If you see something around town that's broken, you take a picture, upload it, and you'll get a confirmation from the Public Works Department, and they'll come out and fix it. They have a good turnaround time. It's a great app. Optimizing revenues. So what are all the legal ways to generate revenue? Are we diversified? How volatile are our revenue sources? And are there ways to fund needs that do not increase overall burden on citizens? So this is an analysis that I started on since coming here. And it's running late, so I'm going to move quick. But the other piece of this is the most important asset that a local government has is public trust, is the most important asset. So when you talk about revenues, you cannot ignore how you communicate with the citizens and how transparent you are. So transparency is key to maintaining trust. Since I've been here, we launched Open Finance, which is like an open checkbook. So you can go on our website, see any vendor we paid, how much you paid them. You can look at our payroll. It's all out there. Project dashboard, this is a screenshot of the project dashboard. So all the CIP projects are online, this project dashboard. So if you have a project you're interested in, you can go to it, click on it, it has a description of the project, the budget, how much we spent, the percent completed. It's a great resource if you're curious about projects in town. Another thing we did is looked at, again, building permit and development fees. We rely heavily on that revenue source for operations. So what I did this year is, all right, let's project build out. How long are we going to have this revenue source? How does it impact revenues going forward? Shared this with council in the budget process. And if we continue the rate we're going as far as building permits, with the exception of Palmetto Bluff, we're pretty much going to be built out by 2030. And you see that revenue drop off. So let's add in the property taxes on top of that. So obviously property taxes are going to go up as we have more homes. Where is that drop off point? And here, 2031, we see a drop off. So when we get to 2031, we're going to have to deal with a gap of almost $2 million. What are the revenue sources we have to fill that gap? So this is our debt. We looked at debt. The state of South Carolina has a debt limit of 8% of assessed value. Very conservative. There's not really much concern around municipalities having too much debt because of this state limit. We're only at 60% of that, so we're very low in the amount of debt we have out there. I'll take a minute real quick to talk about local option sales tax. This is a countywide ballot initiative that was put on the ballot. It's a 1 cent tax. 71% will go to property tax relief, 29% will go to a local fund for projects. here's where we're at today. We're at 7% sales tax. 1% of that is a transportation tax that's going to sunset at the end of this year. If the proposed passes, it'll go towards the lost tax, so it'll remain at 7%. And when evaluating whether or not it's a good deal for you, there's a calculator out there that they put out. They put out a calculator online. That's the website. You can put in your home value, where you live, and it'll calculate how much you'll save on property taxes. And then you look at, all right, well, how much would I have to spend in Bluffton or Beaufort County on goods and services for that not to be a good deal? So if you spend more than, so if this person that lives in a $350,000 home spends more than $46,000 a year, then maybe it's not a good deal for them. But how many, I don't know, maybe you do spend $46,000 a year on consumer goods in the town, I don't know. But yeah, and the way that works, the way that occurs that way is because Beaufort County has about 2 million visitors every year. So the key point of this is the goal, right, is to capture capture revenue from outside residents, people who are visiting town, and then using that to supplement our property taxes in town. So that's kind of the strategy behind it. Causes of volatility, unchecked spending, economic shocks, and disasters. So how do we mitigate this? So we went through a reserve risk assessment this year that looks at all these things: extreme events, revenue stability, expenditure volatility, leverage, liquidity, interfund dependency, growth, and other projects. And we found that we're at high to moderate risk. So what are the strategies to accommodate for that? Obviously, disaster recovery is concerned. We looked at a study out of Florida State University that put a dollar figure to different categories of hurricanes. You can see here category 4 was about $1,400 per capita to the cost of a town. As comparison, Hilton has spent $52 million on Hurricane Matthew. I think Matthew was only like a Cat 2 when it hit the island. Assessing credit quality, we also looked at credit agencies and how they evaluate towns and for their credit rating. They look at greater than 30% in reserves, not spending down your reserves unnecessarily, our ability to impact weather-related events. The other thing we looked at is capital assets. As you can see, we've done a lot of projects around town. This increases our depreciable assets drastically. So a lot of it's new, but in 5-10 years from now, we're going to have to do major renovations, and like the community center, we're going to do some improvements this year. So how do we plan for that in the future and make sure that we're in a good position to accommodate that? So this is what we did. The emergency reserve fund was 50% of just general fund, which was that $22 million. And what I said was, well, disasters or economic shocks impact all of our funds. So why is it 15% of all of our funds? So we increased our emergency reserve. The unassigned reserve, which is kind of like your rainy day fund, it was set at 25% of all budgeted general fund expenditures. We increased it 35% because remember we looked at the credit rating agencies. They look for a reserve that's 30 to 35% or more for a AAA community. And then we looked at capital assets. It used to be just the transportation and equipment reserve, so it was limited to just cars and major equipment. But again, as you saw on that capital asset chart, all the other facilities and parks and whatnot have increased. And so how do we prepare for that? So we made it a capital asset reserve, and then we made the contribution based on depreciation of all those capital assets, not just cars and equipment. And then we removed the cap of $1 million and increased the cap to the most recent 5 years of depreciation. And I give a lot of credit to council as I was throwing all this stuff at them. As you know, council, they have short-term, the 4-year terms, and anywhere I've been getting elected officials to look, 5, 10, 15 years into the future and make decisions based on that has always been a struggle, and I didn't face that here. Every single council member was open to what I had to say. They listened diligently, asked really tough questions, and we came to a really good solution, I think. And I give them a lot of credit for doing that, because in a lot of communities, it's hard to have that conversation. So real quick, 3 notable projects: Squire Pope House. If you haven't been to the Wright Family Park yet, you can go there, absolutely beautiful. And we have the Squire Pope House that we're hoping to renovate. This is a rendering of what it would look like. The screening on the porch top will be removed. There was a breezeway added up there that will be removed. It's going to be restored back to the antebellum era of square foot. This is Oyster Factory Park. Right now it's just a pavilion and a restroom. So we'll have a parking area. There'll be a tree house for the kids, a bandstand area. This deck area will tie in all of this. Beautifully landscaped, much like Wright Family Park. Exciting project there. I think 2023 is when it's planned to be finished. And then, of course, the Riverside Barn Park. So this is way out by New Riverside and Cypress Ridge area near the circle. This is kind of the goal, the plan for the park. It's a very large park, so there'll be a trail that goes throughout it. There'll be a playground added back in here. A field area for different events and potentially concerts. It depends on what the uses that council approves, but that's just kind of a look at what we're planning. And the barn will be converted into an event space that people can rent out for various events. So I know I threw a lot at you. I think I went over my time, but are there any questions about what I talked about today, or about me?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
This is not necessarily code that we're talking about, but the business licenses,
Yeah.
is that process changing with the state and the town?
Yeah. So what the state has done is they did a uniform law, which we've already adopted. So we're updating that currently in our systems. But they're also putting out a statewide platform that you can renew your businesses through this platform, through the state. And it was really put in place for businesses that have multiple locations in multiple jurisdictions. So instead of going to 5 different communities to get your business license, you can go to the state platform, do it once, and they push the revenue down to the communities. But it's for renewals only. If you're a new business, you'd still have to go through the town.
And then, just Beaufort County, for example, if you have a business that's in the county, but you get business in the town, Milkhead, Fort Royals, Beaufort, you got like 5 or 6 business licenses you gotta go take care of.
Absolutely, yeah, it's
They
great.
all have different due dates and they all have different calculations.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a great benefit for just that. And, I feel too, my wife is a mobile veterinarian, so she serves, the whole county in multiple jurisdictions. And when I had to register her business license, you had to go through 5 different towns in the county, and all of them have different ways of doing it and different leverages of technology versus paper-based. So yeah, I completely agree. It'll be a great benefit for
That's
businesses
the
like that.
place for this coming next year.
Yep. Yes?
What is the Riverside Bar Park second season?
Well, I didn't have time to talk about it, but it really depends on where we get the funding for. This is a $12 million project. We are evaluating our TIF and issuing TIF bonds. Again, the TIF is in place right now. It's a high-performing TIF, a lot of revenue coming in. It would not impact property tax. The property tax would still stay the same. We would just leverage that revenue-generating vehicle to fund those bonds. So that is being considered. Nothing is approved. If that gets approved, we take a 5-6 year project and bring it down to a 2-3 year project. So we could do it a lot quicker if we had the money up front. Otherwise, it's doing piecemeal phases over several years. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does Mary have anything else for this evening you want to mention? Good. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the club?